So The Chosen Season 4 is bringing us to a place that, well, I've been really excited to talk about for quite some time. So let's talk about the significance of the gates of hell. And more significant than just the gates of hell is the town of Caesarea Philippi, a Roman town that has a lot of interesting things about it. Now, the gates of hell themselves are very interesting, and we're going to dive into that, but let me show you some of the behind the scenes from our Israel trip this February. So here's a little bit of just some of the stuff that we saw. This is Caesarea Philippi right here. So you can see the spring that's kind of flowing right there down the center of the screen, and this is actually one of the locations that feeds the Jordan River, one of the springs that feeds the Jordan River. Now, if you look at that back wall there, we're basically at the foot of Mount Hermon, right? Which is the northernmost parts of Israel, okay? Now, if you look at this giant rock wall, you actually see that there's a giant cave off to the left. I'll kind of put my cursor there. A giant cave over here. Then you see these inlets in the wall, which we're going to come back to in a bit, okay? But you can see how there's this section down here where everybody's kind of walking, and then you kind of walk up a bunch of stairs and you get to this section up here. Now, let me bring you a little bit closer so you can see kind of what's going on. Now, here's a picture of the area, and you can see there's a massive, massive rock here, right? Like a mountain cliff side here. This is going to be really, really important when we talk about the scripture associated with this place in particular. And remember, this is a real place where real things happened. It's very, very heartbreaking, to say the least. But we're going to dive into it here in just a second. Now, this is from our Israel trip, which we did last February. We had Brandon Robbins come with us, along with David Tate and a bunch of different people. That woman that's standing in the center there, her name is Pilar. She is our guide for our trips, and she has been amazing. She's a Messianic Jew who is one of the most knowledgeable people ever. She just had so much to teach, and it was awesome. This is also a still from a video that I did with Brandon Robbins, a teaching that he did at this location. If you want to see that, you can go to our Patreon. You just got to scroll back a while to see this video from February, probably March area actually. But he did an amazing teaching at this area at Caesarea Philippi. Really, really, really cool. So here is a great diagram. I wanted to get you a picture of this diagram because it gives you an amazing idea of what Caesarea Philippi was actually like and how we're going to kind of see that portrayed in The Chosen. Now, I want you to take a mental picture of this. We're going to zoom in a little bit, but I want you to take a mental picture of this because The Chosen has done an amazing job of recreating this exact area right here. So you can see, obviously, this is how the placards are kind of done in Israel. You have a Hebrew one and an English one in most places, and they also show you where these different locations are in the diagram here. Let's zoom in. So if we zoom in here, we see that we have that section that we just talked about. So if you saw that giant cave in that first picture, right, if I go back, we can kind of associate it with this picture, right? So there's that giant cave over to the left. You also see this inlet right here in the mountainside, okay? So if we go forward again to that section, we see that inlet that's right here. There's a courtyard that's right in front of it. And you see three other inlets that are next to it, if you see my cursor there. Then you see this left section with a very big building that's in front of that giant cave, okay? This is where it gets really, really interesting for me, okay? If you look over to the right side, you also see a bunch of different stuff going on, okay? There's a bunch of different pagan and cult activities happening here where there was basically this whole section is a sanctuary to Pan, okay? Pan is a god in the Roman pantheon. And so they would come here to worship him. They would have a section of dancing goats. There's said that there's probably some animal, I don't know how to say this without getting flagged on YouTube. So some things you shouldn't be doing with animals, but they were doing it with animals was happening here. There was also some temple prostitution maybe that was happening here. But one of the biggest things that happened here was actually human sacrifice. So literal human sacrifice happened here. And a lot of times it was babies, right, that they would sacrifice, which happened in a lot of other pagan areas, but here it happened as well. What would actually happen in this area specifically is if you look at this giant cave, imagine that that giant building is in front of it. They would take their human sacrifice, they would go into this giant building, and behind this building is a massive cave. Let me see if I can find a picture of that really fast so I can show you guys what that looks like. We'll come back to these other ones. So here's the front of it. This is my friend Bryce praying in front of this place. He just felt really overwhelmed when he was here. Very, very, very cool. But here is a picture of the actual cave. You can see the remnants of that temple right here. If you look on the ground, you see the mosaic that's there. Then you see in the back is this giant cave, and at the back of the temple would be right here. Now the cave at this point in time is dry, and I'll show you a little bit of video of that later on. But originally this had a pool of water that led into a spring that was here. Now that has dried up since then, but originally that's how it was. And what would happen is they would throw their human sacrifice into the depths of the water, and this is why it was known as the gates of hell, because they believed that this was a portal, like a literal portal to Hades. And so this human sacrifice would happen here, where they would throw the body into the water, and then on the other side of the spring, you would either get nothing, which means that the gods accepted your offering, or you would get blood, and that means that they did not accept your offering. So you can see how evil and horrible this place is. Now, let's take a look again at this little diagram. You see all these inlets that are in the wall. These would house either statues of gods or different things. Some people believe that they would be images of like genitalia, like different things like that. But if we continue on, you can kind of see the close-up images of these different areas. So again, it's all eroded. It's kind of old, obviously. But that building to the right, you can see remnants of it right here. So if we go back to that diagram, just trying to orient yourself. We're looking from this left side over here where this courtyard is, right here. And we're looking towards this direction over here. So in that photo there, we're looking across the mountain. The mountain's to our left there, and you're looking across it, okay? And so you can see there the remnants of all of these before first century buildings that are still here, which is amazing. But then as we keep going, you can see these huge outlets that are here and the ancient rock. It's all carved into the mountain. It's really beautiful, but again, since you know the history, it's gut-wrenching, right? So we keep on going. You can kind of see how it's all eroded over time. Something used to sit here in this shelf right here, but no longer does, obviously. Again, same thing here. Something would sit in this shelf right here. We also have these inscriptions on the wall, which I'm not sure what they say, but I'm sure someone has translated them somewhere. So again, here's another really well-preserved kind of inlet here where you can see all this decorative stuff. You can also tell that it's Roman in make. Like it looks very Roman in some ways, but in others, not so much. There's another one there. Again, like I said, my friend Bryce there. You can see this. So here is the court of Pan and the nymphs, and it says, the steeped and paved courtyard on which you are standing was built in the mid-1st century CE. So this is mid-1st century, but there's a lot of other portions of this area which are actually pre-1st century. They're from BC. An artificial cave was quarried in the cliff face opposite the courtyard, and there the statue of Pan was placed. Pagan worship was carried out in this courtyard as illustrated below. In 148 CE, 2 more niches were added to the rock face according to the Greek inscriptions chiseled on the rock scarp. One niche household on a sculpture of Echo, the mountain nymph and Pan's consort, and the other a statue of Pan's father, Hermes, son of the nymph Maia, as seen on the coin above. So that's right there. So really, really interesting stuff there. Disturbing, but interesting. There's the cave there. Like I said, you can see the mosaic of the old temple that used to be there. Now here is the chosen set. I wanted to add these in as like a way to show you kind of what it looks like. And you can actually see, now all this green is going to be removed, right? But you can see that large temple building to the left. Now the top of it is obviously going to be CGI that they're going to add in later. But then to the right of that, you actually see the courtyard here. And you see the people who are worshiping Pan in this area. As the apostles and Jesus are approaching Caesarea Philippi, they're approaching the gates of hell. I don't think that Jesus would actually go here. I don't think he would go into this area here. It's way too disgusting and unclean, especially for Jews, right? But we do see here this large inlet, like we saw in the original photo, plus these smaller ones that are here. And then this is the building to the right. That was another kind of temple building, and they did a great job of recreating it. Again, if we look at that that diagram, we can kind of see, again, there's another angle of it showing us above the two different buildings there and then the rock wall behind. But if you look here, you see those three little inlets that are the same as these right there. So that's the chosen, that's real life. So it's pretty close, really, really pretty close for these inlets and these different statues that were placed there at Caesarea Philippi. So really, really interesting. If we go back again, if you look at this, and then we go back to the diagram, you can see the building to the left, the rock wall in between, and then the building to the right. Obviously, it's not done to proportion, but it's done so that they can film on it, right? And so there's that as well. So very, very close. I mean, they've done a really, really good job of kind of representing what it's supposed to look like, which is really, really cool. Let's go ahead and jump into some scripture and talk about this from that perspective. So right here is where we see Caesarea Philippi. And again, we don't get a lot of this we don't get a lot of the background information within the scripture, right? Because people of the day would have known what the gates of hell are. They would have known what Caesarea Philippi is. And so this is, like, it doesn't have to explain it, right, to the people of the day. So Peter confesses Jesus as Christ. Now, when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" And they said, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." He said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter replied, "You are the Son of Christ. You are the Christ, Son of the living God." And Jesus answered him, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven, my Father who is in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." So when he says, "and on this rock," right? What does that bring to mind for you now, right? How are you thinking about that? Are you thinking about this? Because that's what I'd be thinking about. "And on this rock, I will build my church." And obviously he doesn't physically mean this rock, but what he's saying is, I will destroy this and I will build my church on top of it. I will bring something new here that is not pagan worship, that is not evil. It's not this horrible thing that we're seeing. I'm going to bring something holy, something good, right? And he says, the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. Now, this is one word that Brandon Robbins pointed out to us. When he says prevail, this word in the original language almost means it shall not be able to defend against. It shall not be able to hold us off. And so this scripture really puts us to the point of, like, it's showing us not only are we going to overcome this evil that is in this area, but God is going to put us on the offensive to take down this evil and to build holiness and righteousness and godliness on top of it, right? And so it's really, really cool when you think about how all of this is put together and where Caesarea Philippi is. So if you're thinking about coming to Israel with us, I would love for you to come, and this is why. Because you get to see places like this. You get to experience places like this. I've been to Caesarea Philippi several times now, and for me, every single time, it is an amazing experience. Not because it's such a great place that great things happened, but because it gives me a realistic view of how the scriptures are to be interpreted. It gives me a realistic view of how to interact with the scriptures, and it makes them real for me. I implore you, if at all possible, if you can go to Israel, go. I don't care if you go with me or Brandon Robbins or whoever else, but go. Now, our trips are clearly going to be the best. I mean, there's no denying that. For sure, they're going to be amazing. We're refining our trips to make them the best possible, but if you need to go with anybody else, do it. It is worth it. Not just because I said so, but because of your faith. It's going to make these things real to you in a way that I cannot explain, in a way that I can't teach. So anyway, If you're interested, click the link in our description down below. If you want to go to Israel, I would love for you to come. Absolutely. Hope you like this portion of our live stream. And if you want to see the full live stream along with full podcast episodes, go over to our Patreon at patreon.com/thesnipelife. That's the best way to help support us on this channel. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace.